Were Neanderthals capable of music? Let's talk about it. Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Emily Vaccaro. I'm a senior undergrad anthropology major at the University of Maine and former music major from Belmont University in Nashville. And today I intend on blending these two backgrounds when discussing a highly debated archaeological find, the Divje Babe flute. So in 1995, in Slovenia, archaeologists Ivan Turk and Hannes Drjek, excuse me if I mispronounce those names, they ran a series of systematic excavations in the Divje Babe 1, which is a famous Palaeolithic cave site whose age ranges from 35 to 116,000 years old. And the two archaeologists focused on layers dating back to the Mousterian period. Within Mousterian level D1, layer 8A, Ivan Turk and Hannes Drjek discovered a very peculiar-looking femur belonging to a cave bear cub. And for those of you who don't know, a cave bear is similar to brown bears that we see today, but were alive during the Ice Age and then went extinct around 24,000 years ago. So let me show you guys what they discovered. So this is the left femur of a juvenile cave bear discovered near a Neanderthal hearth. And as you can see, the femur has two complete holes on the shaft, a partial hole on the proximal part of the shaft, and a fourth hole on the bottom back side. Because of how these holes were lined up so perfectly, Turk and Drjek wondered if they were intentionally placed there. And considering the Neanderthal hearth and Neanderthal stone and bone artifacts found within the site, the two archaeologists hypothesized that Neanderthals might be behind these holes. And because of the way the holes lay perfectly in a row, they wondered if the femur might have been a flute. What is even more interesting is the age of the femur. Archaeologists initially used radiocarbon dating and estimated it was approximately 43,000 years old. But a little later, using electron spin resonance methods, they discovered that the artifact was 50 to 60,000 years old, which is huge. Humans didn't even make it to Europe until 40,000 years ago. And on top of all of this, if the femur is considered a flute eventually, it would be the oldest instrument ever discovered. Of course, because this discovery is so new, we aren't fully sure. Most archaeologists believe that there isn't enough tangible evidence supporting the fact that Neanderthals created the holes for musical purposes. And a lot of archaeologists believe that these holes were actually made through natural causes, such as teeth from a predator or corrosion. And so because of this, archaeologists did some experiments to examine the possibilities of where these holes came from. For the first experiment I'm going to talk about, Turk and Bastiani, two archaeologists, created metal dentures representing the teeth of predators in Europe during the Middle Paleolithic period, basically to see whether it was possible for predators to make such precise holes. So they made dental casts representing a hyena, a cave bear, and a wolf, and they punctured the femurs of 29 cub and 4 mature brown bears. And once punctured, the holes were then compared to those found on the Divje Babe flute. And when putting them side by side, they're not very similar. Most of the holes weren't as rounded or lined up or in a row like the ones on the flute. And the most similar holes were actually created by a hyena's third upper molar and the canines of what is supposed to represent a cave bear. And when put next to the holes found in the flute, they really aren't that similar. Now, here is a perforation caused by a stone tool, and I'll compare it to the apertures found on the Divje Babe flute. When putting them side by side, the stone tool apertures look a lot more analogous. So for the second experiment, conducted by Ivan Turk as well as some other archaeologists, they took the Divje Babe flute and looked at it under X-ray computed microtomography. And they employed two different types of scans. One focused on the full reconstruction of the femur, while the second scan spliced the femur into different sections using Cobra software. As you can see, there are dotted boxes labeled A, B, and C. When archaeologists looked at these sections, they noticed fragmentation that likely could have been caused by percussion or stone tools. And this is because the type of force used by percussion causes delamination, which is a separation of layers, causing the bone to crack and bulge outwards, which you can slightly see in the dotted boxes, especially in A. And they also found similar flaking in both partial apertures, meaning that they also could have been potentially caused by stone tools or percussion. So for the third experiment, archaeologists Bastiani and Horzicki wanted to see whether it was possible for Neanderthals to create something like the Divje Babe flute. And they did this by recreating it using stone and bone tool replicas found at the Divje Babe Cave. So, for Bastiani's side of the experiment, he utilized a replica of a stone tool found in the Divje Babe Cave, and he would carve out the shape he wanted in a brown bear femur, and then he would take that stone tool and he would punch through the bone, essentially. So once the bone got really, really thin, it was really easy to use the stone tool and pop it out. And a lot of the holes looked fairly analogous. And Horowitz kind of tweaked this a little bit, but he did something pretty similar. So again, he used stone tool replica like ones found at the Divje Babe Cave. And he would carve out the shape that he wanted using the stone tool. But then he would put a blunt bone directly over the indentation and then use a wooden hammer and pretty much hammer in the blunt bone. So it was like a bone punch. And this was very efficient, and it was also very consistent. So now we're going to talk about my favorite experiment as a musician. This experiment was conducted by Ljuban Dimkowski. He's a trumpeter and musician from North Macedonia, and he was tasked with running a series of musical experiments on the replica of the Divje Babe flute. He played different musical scales, jumps at intervals, tested its range, played staccato versus legato notes, tried different tonguing techniques, and it turns out that the Divje Babe flute has a range of 3.5 octaves, which is pretty insane. So for the next 2 minutes, I'm going to play a video of Dimkowski experimenting with a replica of the Divje Babe flute. With it, I will show you the notes he plays and match the notes to notes on the piano. I did this all myself. I listened to it. I had my piano out in front of me. It's my small MIDI keyboard. And I did the best trying to translate the notes that he played to notes on a chromatic scale. So bear with me. A lot of the things he did, like tonguing techniques and stuff, couldn't be translated, but I did the best I could. I also try to provide a musical score. Since it's through Logic, it produces a score. However, it is in 4/4 time, and this video is not in any specific time signature. So just kind of ignore the time signature piece. But if you want to see the notes written out for you, I have that listed down below in the captions. So I'm going to narrate while I show you the notes that are being played on the piano. A lot of the notes lined up to notes on a chromatic scale. And I believe right here, Dimkowski tries to play some overtones, which are 2 notes at once. And this is tremolo, which is the flickering between notes. And you can hear some glissandos as well, which a glissando is the rapid sliding up or down the musical scale. Some more glissandos. And right here, he attempts to do some throat singing, I believe, while playing the flute, as well as some tongue trills and staccato. Some more glissandos in there. Some more glissandos. And that was an overtone, 2 notes playing at once. More glissandos. And some more overtones, which is quite incredible. Here he's experimenting with rhythmic tonguing techniques. Some glissandos. Some staccato notes. And one last glissando. So if you were taken aback by that video, that's okay. There's a lot going on. But there's a lot going on because it's experimental, and Dim Korosky is basically showcasing the flute's capabilities. We really see its range, and we also see it going from staccato to legato, jump in pitch, large intervals, glissandos, tremolo. There's a lot that we learn from this flute. If he had just played a simple song, we wouldn't have seen all the capabilities. But with all the experiments that I've showed you, including Dim Korosky's experiment, but also the dental casts, to the x-rays, to making a full replication of the flute, this sort of begs the question. If the Divje Babe flute was proven to be a flute, what would it have been used for? And I have a couple of hypotheses. My first one is, after listening to Dim Korosky play the flute in a variety of different videos and analyzing them for months now, the flute at times sounded like birds. Especially when notes were played and there was tremolo or large glissandos. Part of me wonders if it was a lure to attract prey. And then one of my hypotheses is that the flute was used to communicate with each other, especially when hunting and gathering, as a warning call or as a way to tell others that there's danger. And then my last hypothesis is that it was used ritualistically. The flute was found near a Neanderthal hearth. So part of me wonders if they practiced commensality and ate around a fire, and maybe someone had the flute and started playing it. Or perhaps they believed in some sort of deity or higher power, and they would play for them. Or maybe it was something just for fun, and they would dance around the fire while someone played the flute. So, in summary, the debate over the Divje Babe flute delves into the Neanderthals' musical abilities and cultural practices. And while the flute's discovery suggests they may have made music, its origins and purpose remain contested. But luckily, experimental archaeology, using methods like dental casts, x-rays, flute reconstruction, and musical experimentation, supports the idea that Neanderthals created the flute intentionally. However, scientists do still argue that natural processes or animal activity could have created these flute-like holes. Despite the skepticism, the consistency of experimental results supports the belief that Neanderthals made music deliberately. And because of this, further research and collaboration are needed to understand the flute's significance and its implications for Neanderthal culture and cognition. Regardless of whether it's a genuine musical artifact, studying music in prehistoric societies sheds light on human evolution and cultural expression. I'm Emily Vaccaro. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.